Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and it's time for Patron Week, that magical time where my most generous of supporters come together and vote on what deck I talk about. And today's theme is one I'm very excited to talk about, in no small part because they've been in the poll since the very start, and now they're finally getting their chance to shine. Premiering in the November 2017 deck build pack, Spirit Warriors, Weather Painters had a lot to prove because theirs was the first deck build pack to be released post-Master Rule 4, which means they had to show off the game's new emphasis on the extra monster zone, link monsters, and column management. Magical Muskets did this by making where you activated your spells and traps an impactful decision. Weather Painters accomplished this by managing the position of your monsters relative to your continuous spells and traps, and Secret Six Samurai did this by giving you a fusion you could summon in the EMZ so you could have all 6 attributes so you could resolve the 6 Shinobi. Yeah, feels like the design document for one of these archetypes was a bit late. And speaking of late, I'm glad Weather Painters took as long as they did to win the poll, because after many years, we just got some meaningful support in Dimension Force. So there's no better time to discuss the cloudy connoisseurs of aerial art. We'll make a quick run to the craft store to pick up everything we need, see how these vibrant colors mix together, then see what other mediums we can bring in to enhance our masterpiece. It's time to brush up on Weather Painters. But before we continue, a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and there's no better way to get there than on our Duel Runners. Our next stop is 30k, where we'll have Jack Atlas Explained, which includes Resonators, Red Dragon Archfiend, and whatever other cards were used by the Master of Faster. We've also got our Discord, where we found out I'm only about 100,000 subscribers away from my own TV Tropes page. I'm also on Twitch, where you can join me for viewer duels and progression pools, and don't forget about my Patreon, where you can gain access to my videos early, reach some of these milestones, as well as helping to determine which explained videos I make. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, what's the deal with Weather Painters? Well, they're a series of mostly level 3 fairy monsters who have 2 effects. One that's unique to them, and a second where if they're banished to activate a The Weather card's effect, you can special summon this banished card during the next standby phase. And while none of their printed effects actually banish them, they gain effects from our on-theme continuous spells and traps, and they just so happen to require you to banish that monster to activate that effect. I'll also be calling these particular cards canvases because A, that's in all of their names, and B, if I have to say The Weather continuous spell and trap every time something interacts with a The Weather continuous spell or trap, I'm gonna have a continuous meltdown. But how do the canvases confer effects? To sum it up, each one grants a single effect to your The Weather monsters in the main monster zones in its column and its adjacent columns. So if you put a canvas in the middle spell and trap zone, that effect is added to your weathers in the center monster zone, as well as to its immediate left and right. But if you place it in, say, the far left zone, it'll only be applied to the monster zone in front of it and the one to the right. This means you'll not only have to carefully manage where you place your monsters, but also how you arrange your canvases, because once you set them on the field, they're very difficult to move. And from now on, I'm just going to be calling them the Weather Painter monsters. The effect text makes sure to specify The Weather instead of Weather, so you don't accidentally give extra synergy to, I don't know, Weather Report, but I'm not gonna let some kind of weird Swords of Revealing Light combo get in the way of good conversational script writing. Weather Painter Snow is a good place to start. They're an earth monster with 0 attack and 2200 defense, and when normal summoned, you can place a canvas from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone. And given stat line, you're gonna want to place a canvas whose effect you can use right away, because a 0 attack normal summon isn't gonna stick around past your opponent's battle phase. Thankfully, since it special summons the monster back, rather than returning to the field, you can bring it back in defense position so your opponent will have to try a little harder to run over them. And because it places them face up on the field, your trap cards are online without having to wait the extra turn, making this monster your Snow 2 starter. Weather Painter Cloud is a wind monster with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and if another face-up weather card you control, no matter the card type, is sent from the field to the grave, you can target up to 2 canvases in your grave and place them face-up in your spell and trap zone. So if your opponent tries to take out your cards, Cloud is here to make sure your works of art come back twofold. And the best part is, they don't even have to leave the field by your opponent's effect. Later on, we'll see weather monsters that send your canvases from your field to the grave, and if you have Cloud, you get those refunded with interest. That's some serious limit breaking right there. Weather Painter Thunder is a light monster with 1700 attack and 0 defense, and they can send a face-up continuous spell or trap you control to the grave to place a canvas from your deck face-up in your spell and trap zone. Now, you can send one of your canvases, and with Cloud that's going to be hella value, but you're not limited to them. If you have a floodgate that you're tired of playing around, Thunder can send it. If you want to be really cheeky, you can run Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen, to get Thunder onto the field without using your normal summon, and then swap it out for a canvas that will work better for your long-term plans. All in all, Thunder's a great way to filter cards so you have the effects you need when you need them. But we've gotta talk about these fashion decisions. Are these camo pants? Buddy, you're flying around in a storm cloud. 1, stealth is way out the window by this point. 2, that's not even the right pattern. You're not out game hunting. Come on! Weather Painter Sun is a fire monster with 1600 attack and 400 defense, and if they're in the grave, you can send a face-up continuous spell or trap you control to the grave to special summon this card in defense position, and if you do, place a canvas from your hand face-up in your spell and trap zone. This one's not the greatest. Sure, it triggers Cloud, and self-reviving monsters should mean better link material, but needing to have a canvas in hand means you need to have the right setup. You certainly have the tools to do so, but you might be forced to make moves you wouldn't want to, including committing suboptimal canvases to the board. However, on the flip side, it is one of the few ways to get immediate access to your weather trap cards that are stuck in your hand. So with careful planning, a skilled duelist can really help this sun shine. Weather Painter Rain is a water monster with 1200 attack and 1400 defense, and if special summoned, you can place a canvas from your hand face up in your spell and trap zone. So this is like Sun, but the summon is the trigger, not the payoff. I'm inclined to say this is something of a downgrade, but since the weather summon themselves back during the standby phase after using their effect, it does mean you can slap them onto the board at something resembling quick effect speed, allowing you to activate cards you wouldn't otherwise have had access to during your turn, perhaps by some other quick effect search we'll get into in a bit. It's also worth mentioning that, as many Pendulum players will tell you, placing cards onto the field via other effects doesn't count as activating them, so it's a great way to dodge activation negation, giving you a chance to rein in your opponent's interactions. Our last main deck monster is also our only level 6. Weather Painter Aurora is a dark monster with 2200 attack and 2000 defense, and when normal summoned, you can place a canvas from your hand, deck, or grave face up in your spell and trap zone, and your opponent can't target weather spells and traps you control with card effects, nor can your opponent destroy them with their effects. And despite all their differences, Aurora still has the ability to summon themselves back if banished for their effect activations. So even if you don't normal summon them, usually through tribute, you give blanket protection to your on-theme back row, which is kind of important, and if you are able to normal summon them, then there's no weather back row beyond your reach. You can supplement your current game plan with any canvas. It is a bit odd though, having a continuous effect like this on a monster that leaves the field quite regularly, but it's better than having nothing at all, and honestly it's pretty fitting considering the ephemeral nature of the Northern Lights. Alright, now it's time for our Link monsters. Weather Painter Rainbow is a Link 3 light monster with 2400 attack, requiring 3 weather monsters as material. Not 2 or more, 3. So you need to sink a lot of resources into it. When your opponent would special summon any number of monsters, you can send this Link summoned card to the grave to negate the summon, and if you do, destroy them. And any weather effect monsters this card points to gains the following effect. When a card or effect is activated as a quick effect, you can banish this card to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So Rainbow is like your canvases, right down to the zones which gain that additional effect. So if you spin them around like this and pretend your continuous spells and traps have those arrows, it's actually a pretty accurate visual representation. But seriously, this card is phenomenal, turning any weather painter it points to into an Omni-Negate, and as a last-ditch effort, you can send Rainbow to the grave to stop an inherent summon. Don't at me, judges, you know what I mean. The drawback is how much it costs. Weather painters don't exactly have good swarming capabilities, so fielding 3 and then needing more to get the Omni-Negates online is a tall ask that the deck wasn't prepared to handle, but we'll get into how that's changed in a bit, so don't let that color your opinion of this monster quite yet. First, we need to talk about our other Link monster, who's one of our latest additions, Weather Painter Moonbow, a Link 3 dark monster with 2400 attack, requiring 3 weather monsters as material. If Link summoned, you can special summon one of your banished weather monsters, getting them back into the fray. And if this Link summoned card is destroyed, you can special summon a Weather Painter Rainbow from your extra deck. And any weather effect monster this points to gains the following effect. As a quick effect, it can banish itself to target a monster your opponent controls and banish it until the standby phase of the next turn, which effectively phases them out kind of like how your weathers work, though theirs is a return to field, not a whole new summon. I could see this being a really strong option if it was 1 link rating less, if Rainbow's material was 2 or more, if we had some kind of way to trigger the on destruction effect, or heck, some mixture of the 3. And while phasing out your opponent's monsters could lead to the direct attacks needed to close out a game, I'm not too stoked about the dark side of this Moonbow. Alright, now it's time to talk about our spells and traps, the cards that give our weather painters their artistic flair. First, our continuous spells. Snowy Canvas grants the effect 2 at quick effect speed, banish itself to add a weather card from your deck to your hand. Also, you can't add cards from your deck to your hand for the rest of the turn except by drawing them. This is, I believe, a very weird way to give this effect a hard once per turn, and keeps you from getting 3 searches all in one turn, but gosh, can you imagine if they let you do that? Unfortunately, you will need to focus on timing this correctly, because this does limit unrelated search effects if you run them. But other than that, being able to turn any monster into a search that you'll get back next turn is outstanding, always making sure you have your next play locked and loaded, and that your game plan never snowflakes on you. Cloudy Canvas grants the effect 2 at quick effect speed, have the weather painter banish itself to target a face-up monster on the field, and have its current attack for the rest of the turn, but it can attack directly this turn. However, you cannot activate this effect during the damage step. This card's got quite a bit of nuance here. The immediate idea is to give you an outlet to deal damage, but with our strongest monster capping out at 2400, we're not exactly going to be hitting in like Masked Hero Anki. However, there's nothing stopping us from using this on our opponent's monsters, making them small enough for our weather painters to run over. But like, you couldn't have let us do it in the damage step? This essentially blocks attacks by banishing our weather painters in the middle of the damage step, so like, come on, this deck can use all the help it can get. This restriction makes this neither easy nor breezy. Rain Canvas grants you the quick effect that lets a weather painter banish itself to target a spell or trap card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Not quite MST, but can keep traps locked down, or remove any problematic continuous effects from your opponent. Though be careful not to return anything with an activation trigger, we want to be the ones gaining a bunch of value, not them. Comparatively, they should only be getting a rain drop in the bucket. Sunny Canvas grants a quick effect that has you banishing the weather painter to target a monster you control. On resolution, you tribute that target, and if you do, special summon a weather monster from your hand or grave with a name different than the attributed monster had on the field. This can help you get Aurora onto the field easily, and thankfully you don't necessarily have to trade your painters. If you've got an extra off-theme monster or some kind of token, you can use them as perfectly good fodder. It even kinda emulates the painter's ability to dodge interaction. Something we haven't focused on yet is, since all the extra effects are at quick effect speed and banish for cost, they can dodge basically anything, ensuring their effects will resolve in the face of basically anything besides activation negations. And with Sunny Canvas, you can do this with your off-theme monsters as well, tributing them in response to something like a Veiler or Imperm, getting them out of the way so their effect can resolve. Or even just replace them with something if they're about to be destroyed or otherwise removed from the field. It can even pull off the time-honored trick of sneaking in a little extra damage in the middle of the battle phase. Cloudy's direct attack might be underwhelming, but a surprise rainbow out of nowhere at full strength is something else, making it something of a hot commodity. Now let's talk about those continuous trap cards. Aurora Canvas grants an effect where, when exactly one card is added to a player's hand, except during the damage step, the painter can banish itself to banish the added card, and if you do, that player draws a card. Okay, this one's pretty funky. So like, if your opponent grabs a specific card you know is gonna let them pop off, you can hand rip it, but they get a draw to replace it, so you're not minusing them, but you are helping to make sure they don't get access to it. On the other hand, it doesn't specify which player has to add the card, and it doesn't exclude any kind of drawing. So if you don't like your draw for turn, you can cash it in for a new draw. And if you don't like that draw, you can use another weather to cycle that card. Maybe you search a weather off of Snowy Canvas, then banish it to set up Moonbow and see what you draw off the top. But it's hard to look at other better cards like Darklaw and Har, which actively minus your opponent, and to then think By Order of the Emperor is at all comparable, no matter how good of a light show it puts on. Thundery Canvas grants an effect where, at the start of the damage step, if a weather battles an opponent's monster, you can banish it to return that opponent's monster to the hand. Now this is what I'm talking about. By Order of the Emperor may be lacking, but turning your monsters into Grand Moles, that's where it's at. Now it doesn't matter what the stat line of your weathers are, because they can now trade with anything that's affected by card effects, and like with Grand Mole, this symmetrical effect is devastating against extra deck monsters. Forget stunning your opponent, by this point you're lightning striking them down. Rainbowed Canvas was a random piece of support from Dark Neostorm that helps with one of the deck's issues, getting monsters onto the field. It grants an effect where, as a quick effect, if your opponent controls a monster, you can banish that painter to special summon a painter with a different name from your deck, but you can't special summon other monsters from your deck for the rest of the turn. There's that pesky pseudo-hard once per turn restriction. But, despite the frustration, this is actually pretty solid. It pairs well with Rain's effect, can swap in Cloud if we fear our canvases are about to get ripped away, and is another way to get Aurora onto the field. And whatever you banish, as usual, will come back later. So it's basically a delayed +1 each turn, so long as your opponent has a monster. This is where I write down that I'm supposed to make a double rainbow joke, because Rainbow Painter is here alongside an actual rainbow, but like, that's not relevant anymore, right? Like, I don't know if this qualifies as boomer humor, but I'll be damned if it isn't close. Alright, this one's a little out of order, but I wanted to save it for last because it recontextualizes the whole theme. The Weather Forecast, a field spell that, when activated, places a canvas from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone. During the main phase, you can activate an effect where, immediately after it resolves, normal summons a weather monster from your hand. And while you have Forecast, you can use face-up weather cards in your spell and trap zone as material to link summon a weather link monster as if they were weather monsters. So we used to have a problem with swarming? Cool, extra normal summon. Want help getting even more cards onto the board? Sweet. We can activate Snowy or Rainbowed Canvas right out of our deck, easy peasy. Is our boss monster a bit too rough to link summon? No problem. We'll just let you use back row like you're playing True Dracos. And using them as link material triggers Cloud. So if you use 2 canvases as link material, you can have Cloud bring them right back. This is an incredible fast track towards Rainbow Painter, and you want to see it as early and as often as possible, because if you do, your opponent's chances of victory will get pretty cloudy with the chance of Omni-Negates. Okay, so that's all the weather cards, but what do we do with them? Well, in lieu of any big beatdown enablers, control is the name of the game. We want to establish Rainbow Painter ASAP to lock our opponent out of cards, then chip away at our opponent's life total with our little paint chips. But what can we play to help them out? The banishing for cost aspect of the deck means we get an opportunity to be one of the best decks that can flex the new triple skill drain. Even the printed effects of our painters can resolve without issue should we chain a banishing effect later on down the chain. This does put Rainbow Painter in a bit of a bind, however, but Skill Drain makes for a great way to stymie your opponent until you're all set up. Then you can just send Skill Drain to the grave with Sun or Thunder. Miraculous Descent is pretty funny. It's basically a version of Called by the Grave that works incredibly well with our deck. And while the summoned monster will be destroyed if Descent leaves the field, the trap card will only be destroyed if the monster is destroyed. So if you banish the summoned painter, it'll just kind of sit there, waiting to be used as fodder for Sun and Thunder. While we play well with a variety of floodgates, we don't want to play too many, as they get in the way of our canvases, so hand trap selection is key, and chief among them is Nibiru. Even if you have an established monster lineup, you can have them all bid the field a fond, if brief farewell, before this extinction level event makes a huge impact. As for a silly tech pick, I might have been bit by the Ghost Trick bug. I'm sorry, but most of our monsters are level 3, so any 2 make Ghost Trick Alucard, overlay them into Angel of Mischief, detach to add shot from deck to hand, use it to summon back the Alucard, make another Angel of Mischief, and then overlay all the way up into Utopic Draco Future. It's a monster negate every turn on a huge body with protection. How can you not play this? But if that nerve is still a bit sore, you could also play Protecting Spirit Logath. They get special summoned to the field from your hand when you activate a fairy effect outside the damage step, which you can do very easily, and can turn attack position painters into banishing removal. And if Logath is destroyed, you can grant one of your monsters battle destruction protection for the turn. And that's all I've got to say about Weather Painters. It's hands down one of the most unique decks I've ever seen, and while it trades away a lot of competitive staying power for it, the deck operates in a way that most strategies aren't prepared to handle easily. Once you've gotten off to the races, this deck can steamroll with the best of them, and really emphasizes how beautiful the art of dueling can be. But no, seriously, where's Red Painter? But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you think weather painters have the talent to move the hearts of the competition? Or are these going back to the old DeviantArt profile? And I mean the middle school DeviantArt profile. Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander, Adam Zajdel, Nebula Navigators, Benjamin Meisner, Eric, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba331, Howling Zangetsu, Inblink, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Shooting Star 3300, The Fresh Prince of Conair, The Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Serb, Chaz Ghost, Colin Todd, Corbinisms, Cozy Boat 275, Jesus Garcia, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, RGS and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue this thanks to the support of these lovely people, and if you'd like to be a part of the credits, as well as help me in my journey to help cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you want to hear me talk about another theme that has a big emphasis on spells, check out this video I did where I talk about Mysteroon. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi-Tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenkinai's latest series, Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.